Well, this session we will focus on an introduction to prolegomena, and in your PowerPoint you can look at slide 31 and onward, and we will also make various distinctions in within the world of theology, if you will. Systematic theology, biblical theologies, what are these things? So prolegomena is what we do before we do anything else, including theology. So pro means before, and lego means speak, so before speaking. Geisler put it this way: prolegomena is the introduction to theology. It deals with the necessary preconditions for doing systematic theology. And, in my view, the same pertains to biblical studies, in particular, the book of beginnings. So if we can set the record straight somewhat in our mind and deal with our assumptions or presuppositions or preconditions, including philosophical underpinnings um, that we all hold or have before theology. It's like I once heard it put this way: behind every theology there is a underlying philosophy, and that philosophy is either good or bad. And if you have a bad philosophy, bad preconditions, you're going to have a bad theology. That seems to follow. So we'll begin with an introduction to prolegomena and establish that truth is knowable. Otherwise, it's meaningless to engage in quote-unquote God talk. God's existence and his attributes, historical theology, Christology, those areas are just meaningless if knowledge relativism is true, or what's called epistemological relativism. The claims that there is no truth, no one knows what truth is, and that lies in the realm of epistemology, which is a study of knowledge, how we know what we know, is certainty possible, etc. So when we say God exists or Christianity is true, we have to defend a few things there. First, we have to defend that truth exists. We will also deal with selected topics concerning theological issues, some that are hotly debated today, including various philosophical and theological movements. We'll discuss them as we get further into our study. We will also notice that a lot of theological themes intersect with, of course, metaphysics, especially when it comes to the nature of God, and in particular, philosophy and science in relation to the arguments or proofs for God's existence. All right, as far as theology and biblical studies go, slide 34, theology is the study of God. Theos plus logos. Theos is God and logos is reason or discourse. So it's a discourse about God. As far as four rough theological divisions, there are mainly four of these that will blend back and forth as we go through the book of Genesis. Biblical theology, you have historical theology, systematic theology, and apologetics. Number one, biblical theology, the study of the biblical basis for theology. And then two, you have historical theology, which is the study of Christianity's great theologians. Three, systematic theology, which is the collected enterprise, including special revelation and general revelation, into a coherent and consistent system. Systematic theologians, they systematize everything and make categories and distinctions and so forth. So that's number three. And then four, you have apologetics, from apologia, the defense and the protective branch of Christian theology against attacks, both internal within the church and external outside of the church. Atheism, cults, New Age, those type of attacks. All right, so what are some helpful tests in how to arrive at truth? Well, we can look at a few of them. We can look at facts. You need factual support. Genesis has been attacked, ridiculed by many, and is by all means a controversial book, right, for modern man, since it claims to be from God, claims to be the truth about man's origin and fall, etc. We will apply a few of these as we go, so you might want to jot these down. We need facts. We need internal consistency. We need to recognize various presuppositions We need to discover and explain what explanatory power is, explanatory power, and we need to be able to refute other worldviews and provide more than one line of evidence. So first, facts. Um, the system that has the most facts is, chances are that that religion or that philosophy is the one that is true. The more factual support, the better. Internal consistency, number two, refers to the document can't contradict itself. It has to be internally consistent. So if you compare, say, the Pearl of Great Price with the New Testament, or the Book of Mormon historically from the Old and New Testament, comparing the historicity, if you will, of the Book of Mormon, well, there isn't any. It's not historically reliable. And further on, when you look at, the idea that they believe that there's a God, talking about the Mormon Church, that God exists, and they would affirm that the King James Version specifically, they hold to that version, including their other books. But in the book the King James Version, just as all the other versions, state that there's only one God. There's no one besides me, says God. Yet Mormons argue that God was once a man. So that's internally inconsistent to say that God is beginningless. He had no beginning, no end. There's only one God, and then at the same time claiming that God was once a man and achieved this divinity, etc. So internal consistency is important. Recognize various presuppositions. We'll deal with that as we develop prolegomena a little further. Explanatory power. Can we explain things? I mentioned in our last session, origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Those four categories. Who can explain those the best? So that would be explanatory power. Can we give a reasonable case for theistic origins, the meaning of life, where we're going? What about objective morality? Explanatory power, the more the better. Are we able to refute other worldviews? And then finally, more than one line of evidence. For example, the village atheist might say, look at the problem of evil. And Hans Kung of Germany has called evil the rock of atheism. Well, you need more than that. And of course, atheists have more arguments than that. But the point that I'm trying to make is you need to have various lines of evidence, credible evidence, and plausible evidence, and logically possible arguments. Those things, what one person considers evidential or solid is not necessarily solid for the next guy. So oftentimes when we refer to proofs or evidence, it's a good thing to safeguard and maybe call some of these things possible truths, plausible truth, plausibility, seemingly true. Which system, which argument has the strongest degree of plausibility, if you will. So look that word up. It's a good word. Anyway, talking about truth now, Pilate asked Jesus, what is truth? Jesus, the truth incarnate, stood right before Pilate when he asked that question. Very interesting. And of course, in John 14:6, Jesus claims to be the truth. I am the way, the truth, and life, and no one comes to the Father but through me. Does that mean that there's only one truth? Well, in context, he's referring to salvation. Salvifically, Jesus is the only truth. Of course, there are other truths, such as Moses exists, Yahweh, God the Father, Genesis is the first book of the Bible, there's a moon, there's a sun, you exist, I exist, there are other minds. There are various truths. So when he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father but through me, he's not saying that that's the only truth. He's claiming to be the only truth as far as salvation goes, because the latter part of the verse says, no one comes to the Father but through me. Now, what about the claims I mentioned earlier in epistemology or epistemological relativism? Episteme is the Greek word for knowledge, or one of the Greek words for knowledge. The relativist, not the moral relativist, but the knowledge relativist or the epistemological relativist will claim, there is no truth. Another slogan would be, what's true for you may not be true for me. Sort of a mantra. Truth is relative. There are no absolutes. I'm skeptical of everything. Prove that I am here and all of this is in a dream, those type of things. So deal with the first one real quick. There is no truth. That claim itself is a truth claim. To say that there is no truth is a truth claim. So if there is no truth, then we have one truth, namely the truth that there is no truth. So it's self-defeating. It begs the question, sort of like Confucius, so he said, give man rope and he will hang himself. That's exactly what that sentence does. It commits suicide. There is no truth is a truth claim. The person who says there is no truth certainly doesn't believe that that's a false claim, right? Now, so you have two forks in the road here. You could say there is no truth. You could argue that, well, if there is no truth, then we have one truth, at least the truth that there is no truth. On the other side, you could say, if it really were true that there is no truth, then it would be false to say that there is no truth. So either way, can't win on that one. What's true for you may not be true for me. Same thing there. No one speaks like that when it comes to mathematics, for example, or natural law, things like that. Either there's a door in front of you or there's not a door in front of you. If it's true for me that 2 + 2 = 4, and it's not true for you, well, you bumped your head a few times, one too many times. There are absolute truths, such as there's a world, there are stars, there are people. It's wrong to torture 2-year-olds for the mere fun of it. People who disagree with that, they need to be locked up. So that would be a moral truth. But same thing here, number 3, truth is relative. Well, that claim alone is an objective statement. Truth is relative. It claims to be truth. There are no absolutes. Well, that in itself is an absolute statement. So you hear a lot of that type of thinking in modern culture. Or this one, I'm skeptical of everything. Well, that's not necessarily true, because the skeptic is not skeptical of his own skepticism. Oftentimes, they are dogmatic skeptics. They believe skepticism to be true. And of course, finally, prove that I am here and all of this is in a dream. And if you were to tell the person to pinch himself, well, the skeptic could say, well, that's part of my dream, and so forth. So how do we deal with the final skeptical argument, prove that I am here? Augustine, early church father, 3rd, 4th century, he was approached by a skeptic, came up to him and says, so Augustine, prove to me that I exist. Guess what Augustine asked? He asked a question back, and he says, who wants to know? Right? So, prove to me that I exist, Augustine. And Augustine said, who wants to know? There must be a who to question the who-ness existence in the first place. So obviously the person raised the question exists. Of course, you got the famous dictum cogito ergo sum, René Descartes, Cartesian thinking. I think, therefore I am. Same thing there. But the joke is, of course, nowadays that Descartes put Descartes before the horse, in that it really should be I am, therefore I think. Not I think, therefore I am. I am, therefore I think would be more correct. So, having said that, if it were true that there is no truth, then what would be the meaning of John 14:6? I am the way, the truth, and life, right? If it were true that there is no truth, including historical truth, then how can we proclaim a literally historical resurrected Jesus, right? If there's no truth and say nothing can be known for sure with certainty, then how do we know that God exists? And this is why prolegomena is important. In our next session, we will develop the metaphysical precondition, just very introductory because we don't have too much time. You can look at other lectures that I've uploaded on Populi where you should have more of this. Metaphysical precondition, supernatural precondition, the revelational precondition, the rational precondition, the semantical precondition, the epistemological precondition, the oppositional precondition, the linguistic precondition, the hermeneutical precondition, and the historical precondition, and finally the methodological precondition. And as foreboding, as Geisler says, as this project may seem, These are the preconditions necessary to make evangelical theology a possibility. So we will develop those in our next session. Meanwhile, have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.